Before we met with Accrue, we had no financial plan. We didn't think we could ever possibly afford an investment property. So meeting with them and discovering we could was fantastic.
We were actually referred to Accrue. So we're quite grateful we were.
I've always been interested in investing in property, but I always thought it was well out of my reach. I thought that it would be something that I could never afford to do, or if I did afford it, it would not be until a lot later in life. I've spoken to friends who have got them, and there always seems to be a lot of issues involved. But meeting with Accrue and realising how easy it would be and that I could actually afford it was fantastic. In terms of finances, we didn't think we could afford to do something like this. We had children that were living at home, we had school fees, and even though we were on what we thought were reasonably good wages, we didn't think that this was in the realm of possibilities. But going through the finances with Ben and Craig, we realised that it was actually very achievable. They gave us lots of options in terms of the different properties we could purchase, and they gave us spreadsheets with all of the possible costs that could be incurred and how we could offset those, and it just looked so easy and so achievable, as I said.
They were very detailed projections.
Very detailed projections. And not unrealistic projections either. They really looked at worst case scenarios, and even at worst case scenarios, they were still really good figures to work with. I think when you're investing in a property, one of your major concerns is always going to be, are we going to get a tenant? But Accrue took that worry out of our hands. They actually have agents that they employ that will help us to find a tenant, and that's a weight off our minds, because we don't want to be investing in a property that's going to sit there empty and not having a tenant in it. But no, they made that really, really an easy process. Prior to this, as I said, the thought of investing has always appealed to me in property, but going through Accrue, they did all of the groundwork for us. The thought of having to go around and look at properties myself and find something suitable, I wouldn't have known where to start. I wouldn't have known what areas to start in, but because they do this on such a grand scale, they knew where to look. They knew the questions to ask about up and coming areas, things that I wouldn't think to ask. And they aren't emotionally invested in areas like I would be if I was going to be looking on my own. They know the questions to ask of local councils, they know the areas that are developing, and so they do all of the groundwork for you, which made the whole investment process so easy.
Yeah, pretty much a no-brainer once we sat down with them and saw what they, as I said earlier, their financial projections and all that sort of thing. It was like, well, this is just too easy. Sometimes, you think those things are too good to be true, but it's taken right out of our hands.
And it made us wonder why we hadn't done it earlier, because looking at the figures, we could have actually afforded to do this long ago. So when we first went to Accrue, into their offices, they sat down with us and went through all of the projections. They were so easy to work with. They had everything worked out for us. They then went through the 3 properties, what all of the expenses would be involved with each one, and that helped us to make our decision too. There was no pressure whatsoever to make a decision on any particular property, and no pressure whatsoever to even go with them. If we had wanted to walk there and then we could have, but we didn't want to.
No, and look, it was almost like, being a student at school, you were spoon-fed. We didn't have to do a thing. We didn't even have to know a thing.
No.
It was so well explained how the whole process of property investment works that everything was taken out of our hands. We don't even feel like we had to work with them. They did it all for us.
They have a great knowledge of the way that we could actually invest that we had no idea about. And that's what we appreciated, that they had that knowledge. In terms of research, we didn't have to do anything. They did it all for us. And that was one of the things that we loved about it, because I wouldn't have known where to start, but they just basically, as Pete said, spoon-fed us.
Not only would we not have known where to start, but we didn't really have the time to put any sort of effort into it. So it was so easy to have someone else do it all for you.
Our experiences with them were fantastic. Ben was the loveliest guy to work with. He very, very amiable, very explained everything perfectly to us, answered all our questions. And Craig, who worked with us in finance and helped us to set everything up financially, again explained everything in really simple terms that we could understand. And we didn't feel like we were being bamboozled by language or any terms. We just understood everything. It was so simple.
It was a very smooth process, and even once we made the decision to go ahead with the property that we have, the process from then on until, right through to having our deposit organised and drawn down, contracts and that sort of thing, was just so smooth.
This is why we'd have no hesitation in getting another property in a couple of months, which is what we aim to do, because it's just been so simple. And there was an upfront fee that was, we felt, very, very minimal, and that will see us through as many properties as we want to buy with them. We don't have to outlay any more cash or have any more expenses involved with working with them. It's already done.
Pretty much, through our first experience and how well it went, that when we want to take a second one on, all we've got to do is ring Ben and say, want to go again, go find us something.
And he'll do it.
It'll just be a matter of rocking in. He shows us what he's found, we make the decision, and we just go that one.
That one-off fee is exactly that. It's a one-off fee. So next time we decide to go ahead and get another property, we don't have to pay that fee again. It's already been paid, and we can purchase as many investment properties through Accrue as we like, and we don't have to pay another fee. Initially, the thought of having another mortgage and borrowing money for another property was pretty scary. But when we sat and looked at the figures, we realised that it was completely achievable. The costs were minimal, and it was something that we could do, and something that we wish we'd had done before.
Yeah, we didn't feel like we didn't walk away thinking, gee, we're going to have to make some real cutbacks on our lifestyle, this, that and the other to afford it. Pretty much, don't go out for coffee this day, or don't go out for coffee that day, and or whatever, those little luxury things, but never felt like we had to make massive alterations to our lifestyle and the things we do that we like, that we enjoy, in order to afford this.
Something else they've done is they've kept us informed all along the way. No hesitation to recommend to any of our friends that if that's what they wanted to do, go to Accrue.
I'd be very surprised if there's anybody who could walk away from Accrue having had a negative experience.